So that's the big way to help, is finding that person that's willing to step up and say, yeah, I think I know who it is.
I know that's been a big thing out there, that Derek hasn't stepped up and spoke out and everything. But first off, that's not his personality. He's a very quiet, private person. And then you have to stop and think. Was he a snitch? Did he narc? Was he a confidential informant? No. He was none of those. So does he feel like that he got her killed? No. But he was out there. He was the one out there searching for her. And he knows that. And for everything that we know from the timeline and stuff, he was probably there when they were killed. And he knows that. He has to live with the fact that he may have been there. He may have passed the guy and couldn't save his daughter. So no, does he want to go out and talk about that? And he's not one to want to break down in front of people. And there's some of them that would just like for him to go out there, just like they've done us, just so they can slam him. Really? Is that necessary? I don't think so.
And he's a grown man. If he wants to talk, it'll happen. So people think we're suppressing him, keeping him, locked in his room or something. He's bigger than me. If he wants out of his room, he's going to get it. But
he does a lot behind the scenes.
Yeah.
He does a lot that people don't see, and it's not important for them to see.
And he's working a lot on the park right now. Him and his dad, the other grandfather, they're down there. We're making good progress on the memorial park. I was down there and I walked all over that area. After the fact, and I was just down there. I had to go look for anything I could find that somebody may have missed. I spent a lot of time. Let's just put it that way. Looking, up and down, and I even climbed trees, looking the forks. Sounds crazy, but I wanted to make sure that, not that I didn't trust the investigative team. I just had to do it kind of for myself to know that I combed the area and I didn't find anything.
With what you said as far as protecting the integrity of the investigation, is that partially, or could that be a big part of the reason why you may not have hired an investigator, a private one, or have you actually tried that?
No, we have talked to a couple, and we talked to a good one that said it wouldn't do any good to hire one right now anyway. With it being an active investigation, they're not going to give them any more information than the rest of the public has. Well, maybe they could go get in somebody's trash or something, but they're not going to solve this. They're not going to have enough information. So, and besides that, there's a $250,000 reward out there. If there's any investigator that thinks he could solve it, wouldn't he?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, again, it all goes back to kind of the integrity of the investigation. But if you're putting specific people out there, you know what I mean? Everybody's innocent until proven guilty. That's the way our society, our laws work. But my opinion, why would we ever want to tip somebody off? If somebody did think it was the guy and it ends up being the guy, why would we want to tip our hand? Why wouldn't we want to give that to law enforcement and give them the edge? That's why I say, let's just go to law enforcement. Those are the people who are going to make the arrest anyway. Those are the people that are out there on the front line. They're the ones that are going to go in. They're the ones going to build the case. They're the ones that are going to hand it over to the prosecution. So let's give them the upper hand, and feed it that way. That's what I would ask the people to do, and not while you can theorize and you can look, and look for people and try to figure it out, but give the police the upper hand versus posting it out on a YouTube video. And if it is the guy who say, the old guy says, "Oh crap, they're on to me.
Right.
I'm out of here," and he's gone.
And you have to always consider that whoever did this could be watching anything you do, right? Including this. There's like 800 and something people in here, so you right now you can only imagine, if you were someone that did something like this, that you would want to keep up on it, right? So you'd have to be careful. And I, like you said, Mike, there are a couple, and I don't want to call on anyone in particular, and I'm sure people are just trying to help, but there are a couple that have said, not really names, but kind of who people are to people, and said, it's this person that did something. I saw it psychically. And I just want to say, I don't really care if you believe in that or you don't, but I hope if you're putting something like that out there, that at least you really, really believe that, because you're accusing someone who's their whole life is going to be changed, especially for a case this size. To say it was, the cousin, so-and-so's cousin or whatever. I don't want to say the specific thing this person said, but you got to be really careful about doing that. That's more so just to any media people.
That's a good point, Jason. And I hope, and people do, and that's probably what it's going to take, is somebody to recognize and make that step and make that leap forward and put that out there. But let's put it to the police, put it into the law enforcement's hands, so give them the upper hand. That's what they need. Think about it. This guy's got to be lucky 24/7. All we need is, or he's got to be lucky every day. All we need is one day that we're lucky, and we hit it, and somebody turns in the right information and they're able to act on it. That's what we need.
I like. Oh. No, I was gonna say I like that quote. He can be lucky his whole life. We only need that one day. I like that. And then, see you later, bud.
Yeah.
For the most part, the media, the YouTubers, everybody have been wonderful. You guys have spread the word a lot. A lot of people know about this case because of you guys, and we're very, very thankful for that. There are a few that seem to enjoy just throwing faces out there. They don't care. They know it's not them. Deep down, they know it's not, because they throw a different face out there and say it's this person every other day. So there's absolutely no way that they switch that fast. So there's people out there using that for entertainment. And what they don't realize is they are messing with people's lives. They're going to click off that computer, but those people have to live with it.
Yeah,
right.
So there's a minute amount that are negative and takeaway, but 99% of you guys have been nothing but helpful for us.
Do you know if any fingerprints were found on the phone?
Well, I don't know, but I don't know about on the phone, but Tobe in an interview did say, because I was quite shocked when I heard it in an interview, that there was a partial fingerprint or something. So he said, law enforcement has said that there is something. Now, have they ever told us from where they got it? I don't know.
Not to me.
Well, let's certainly hope they follow up with more or with a lead on that one.
How terrible it must be not knowing all the details. And I put that on screen to make sure everyone that is just joining the channel today knows, never, ever, ever assume that something is too, and Mike actually went over this a little bit earlier, but that a detail is too small to come forward with, or too inconsequential, or, oh, I'm not going to bother telling Mike and Patty or the authorities because they must already know this. Because like Sabrina just said, constantly, I'll talk to families and I'll ask a question that appears to me to be public knowledge by my research, and they don't know. So everyone doesn't know everything. And like what it takes is putting together, it's like a puzzle, a million tiny little pieces. So it just never assume that something if you know anything, come forward is the point I'm trying to make. All the information is in the description below for both the authorities, the tip lines, Becky, anything like that. So please, anything, come forward. Don't make any assumptions.
Yes, please. That's what we need. That's the best help, anybody can give us. We would love to see this thing turn the corner and get to the prosecution state or phase. No, but just a reiteration of, spreading the word. And like Becky was saying, of course, in today's world, it's kind of hard to talk to somebody at the grocery store. We're all have masks on. We're 6 feet apart, but that's what the power of everybody pulling together. Social media, these events, whether it's the actual news or whatever, turning that information in and sharing that information. Somebody's going to know something, and somebody's going to turn it in. And I guess one other thing to point out is, and Doug Carter had mentioned it, there was a car that was parked where the old, I think they call it Child Protective Services building was, since been torn down. But there was a car parked there that day. We don't have any more description on it other than it was a car that was parked there. And I've asked the police, well, what kind of car is it? I'll be on the lookout for it. If somebody says, somebody knows something about that car, please come forward and share that information, because that might be that piece of that puzzle that somebody says, okay, it was a 1974 Vega or whatever. Somebody says, yeah, I saw that out there. Then bring that information forward, please. And I see somebody's asking they need to give a description, and I don't think they have a good, complete description of the car. It was very sketchy from people who said, yeah, we saw a car parked there. I don't always pay attention to those, and people that day probably didn't either. But there was definitely a car parked around that building, and any information on that could be huge.
Yeah, a lot of people mentioning that the info of that car isn't put on the police website or whatever. So maybe they don't have it, like you said, or who knows, I suppose. But that could be very pertinent information. Yeah, it certainly could. And I know Doug expanded on it, like I said, in that presser.
Okay. Well, and that might be something that we could ask him,
Yeah.
Could you put something about the car on the website because.
Yeah, I'll certainly ask that question. That's a good point.
Let's see. Let me just grab that. Looks like I actually just deleted it. Awesome. So we're going to go back to the audio again. Obviously, you guys have heard it more times than anyone really should have to. But we've had a couple of people say, we've had it come up a couple of times. One person has asked Steph, is it possible that he said, what time do you have? To me, it sounds like this with a Southern accent. Makes sense for a reason to come close. Makes sense for a reason to come close to her if she already had her phone out. And then to follow up on that, another person is asking, did the girls refer to him as creepy guy?
Okay, so the first part of your question, I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to get it all down here.
Yeah. I'd be more, trust me, putting it together was like that too.
Yeah.
So
reiterate the first part, please.
Yep. And I can actually play it too, just for them, since I see he's got it pulled up. I've got the wrong file up. One moment.
You're saying that somebody's asking about maybe what time it is?
Yeah, instead of the down the hill.
Oh.
Yeah, instead of down the hill. Because you guys have listened to that, so many times. Have you ever, and I guess to expand on that, have you ever thought about, were they saying something else other than down the hill?
No,
I mean, that sounds like down the hill to me, no question.
It's down the hill.
Yeah.
He's definitely telling them to go down the hill.
But let me, someone did say earlier about they feel like the guys, it could be a different voice than that guy. I mean, that doesn't sound so to me. What do you think on that?
They brought that up at the presser, that they specifically said guy, because it They just specifically said that was the same person saying both.
What rumors are there? Any like specific rumors or groups of rumors that you'd like just to see stop or end completely?
Well,
most of them, right?
Well, I mean, everybody's got a theory, you know, and that's a room, you know, can kind of be looked at as a rumor or can lead to a rumor. Obviously, anything that's going to affect somebody who's truly innocent out there, you know. And Becky kind of touched on that earlier. We don't want to see anybody dragged through the mud. There's at least one person we know that's responsible for this, and that's the one we're after. So with all the stuff that gets thrown around out there, and there's been plenty thrown around about me, and I guess that's part of it. You know, there's not a book on this that we go to and read and say, okay, what do we do next? But you know, have some compassion when you're looking at this and looking at people, and understand that it affects more than just maybe even the person that you're going after. You know, they have family members, they have you know, a job, a career, and social media is just a part of things today. You know, even job interviews and things, that people are looking at people's social media and see what they're doing out there before they ever hire them. So if there's stuff strung out there about somebody, it could be devastating. Now, if it's the right guy, I don't care so much about that, but there's been a lot of things put out there that just haven't come to pass. Well, keep doing it.
You guys are doing it.
And everybody out there, keep it up. We're going to get this guy, and it's going to take, you know, everybody's collective help to get this done.
This bridge was one of the last things that Abby Williams and Libby German saw before they were murdered. In the winter, this is not a welcoming place. The trees are bare. There is no forgiveness coming from the cold gray stones of the abandoned railroad bed. It was on this bridge where Libby German videotaped a man that police believe killed the two girls. Police have released less than 2 seconds of video of him walking along, with audio recording of him saying 4 words.
You gonna release any more video?
Not right now.
At some point?
I don't know.
At what point do you think you need to release some more?
When we think there'd be value. Remember, we have a voice and we have a picture and we have a video. I'm not sure what value there'd be in releasing anything else. I want the killer to know that we know more than what he thinks we know.
According to police, the killer is a man that knows his way around Delphi. He may have worked there, lived there, or visit the place on a regular basis. He may even know the girls or their family.
So in my opinion, when they say, you know, there's a good chance that we know who they are or their families, it is 100% probable if they are from this area that we have crossed paths. Whether they knew the girls directly, I couldn't say.
Police have not released publicly how the girls were murdered, if they were assaulted, or if investigators recovered DNA. The crime scene was nearly the size of a football field, and whatever happened to Abby and Libby along the bridge left a mark on Carter.
It stays with you, doesn't it?
It does.
He knows that whatever evil was committed along that bridge is seared into the mind of the killer, and that he has most certainly shared that memory.
I believe with every ounce of my soul that somebody's living with this person and they know it. And I say that because if you thought of anybody in your family, your son, your dad, your brother, your uncle, your neighbor, whoever that is.
Somebody knows what happened that day. We're waiting, and we're not going to be as patient. We're not as patient. We want answers, and somebody knows, and we need them to call that tip in. We need them to do what they should have done nearly 3 years ago.
Police are in an extraordinary situation. They have video and audio of the murderer. They have received nearly 50,000 tips, have interviewed hundreds, including the killer or someone that knows him very well.
We either have interviewed him or we've heard of him. Yes.
But for the first 2 years of the investigation, this one sketch was the face of the investigation.
We've received some criticism. I know this is coming too, so I'll just jump right on it. I think that I should have been the person that received the criticism when we released a second sketch. You know, we were a year and a half in, 2 years and 2 months in, on the April 22nd, 2019 press conference. And I'm very unapologetic about that.
3 years ago, a monster dressed in a blue coat, jeans, and a hat emerged from the trail and killed 2 teenage girls. The question is, where is that monster today?
Also, the Abby and Libby Memorial Park with plans for ball diamonds and playgrounds. Fundraisers are paying for construction.
Years and years and years from now, we won't be here, but the park still will be, and other kids will get to play and hear about our girls.
They're also asking for pet food because Anna says Abby and Libby love their pets as much as people.
We probably would have adopted hundreds if it had been up to either one of the girls. I'm sure every stray thing that came through, it felt like, well, let's let it stay.
Abby's big heart is what drives Anna to this day.
I hope they're really proud of us.
Tammy, it would seem very hard to believe that somebody could find that bridge because even some of the locals that do live here and have lived here didn't know how to find it. But several things come into play in that. One of those is that the old road system was taken out and an interstate was put in called the Hoosier Heartland. That was on an extensive project where even I had a hard time figuring out where the old roads and the new road connected because some of the cutoffs were moved and you had to go another way. So it feels very hard to believe that somebody that had not lived here at some point or did not currently live here could easily stumble upon this area. It's just that far out. And people that lived here for years said, I never knew that bridge was there. I mean, I've heard people talk about it, but I didn't know where it was. So it's kind of a 50-50. It seems more probable that it's somebody that did live here or currently lives here as to the location of the bridge.
So do you have a profile you've created who you think it?
I haven't really. It just doesn't make sense to me how somebody who hasn't done it before goes straight to killing 2 girls. Through all of my research, that's one thing I've never found was a first-time offender going out in public and killing 2 girls in broad daylight. That's just not something that happens, especially 2 young girls, especially one bigger than the other one who definitely could have fought him off. So, yeah, that's all I have. I've never really created a profile. I just feel like I haven't done all of my forensic psychology classes enough to go into that. But yeah, someday.
Yeah. I've heard rumors that there's people or that there's information that they've shared with you guys that they haven't shared with the public. Like one of the things that I read about this morning was they said that you guys were able to listen to audio from Libby's phone. Is that true?
I believe that my grandparents and Anna all listened to a lot of the video. I never did. I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah, I think that they just wanted to see if they knew the voice. So I think what they heard was just what's been put out there, but a little bit more extended.
Yeah. Do you think the bridge guy might be from the Delphi area, or do you think he was just some guy roaming around?
I definitely think he has to be local. He definitely knew that bridge pretty well. I know people in Delphi that didn't know that bridge was there. So you definitely have to know the trail system to know where High Bridge is, and to even know High Bridge exists, you have to know the area. So yeah, he's local, or at least knows Delphi.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we were originally capable of dealing with the high crimes of those type nature in the beginning, because we just recently, I mean, we've had detectives before, but they typically just do your normal battery and your normal type thefts and stuff like that. And what's happened is when you get a crime like these two, you just don't have, you might have a lot of experience with the several people that's in the room. So you can say, well, this person's got 20 years on, this person's got, 15 on, and this person's got 10 years on, and they add all those together. It sounds like you've got a lot of law experience there. But when reality hits, you don't have a lot of law experience as far as those type of crimes. And I've been to classes, and I've learned that when you have crimes like this, you need to bring in somebody that's really got solid experience in this type of crime that can make sure that you put your detectives with, so that they're led in the right direction and made so that because if not, you just don't become Sherlock Holmes right off the bat. You don't learn this kind of stuff. It's something that it takes years of experience, and sometimes it'll even baffle the experts, that come in. And so you really need to hit the ground running with solid people that know what they are doing in an aspect like this type of crime.
In terms of Delphi in particular, one thing that we've talked about in the past is sort of like the tip line and sort of soliciting tips with the sketches. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that and whether or not that was a help or a hindrance to the investigation.
In the beginning, I didn't know any more than anybody else did, and that's what I strived to learn from this ordeal. And they can certainly be helpful if everything works correctly. But I think in this case, I think it was a big hindrance in many ways, because what you got was people not just calling from anywhere in the United States, but we've had calls from people around the world in reference to this case. And when you got to take back and look into each and everything, that really slows down the progress of anything that you might have. And it tends to complicate the case much, much more.
And it sounds like they're keeping it pretty tight-lipped, even within the departments that are investigating.
Yes, absolutely. It's not something that this county was ever prepared for. As much as you try to prepare for stuff like this, it's not one that we thought we'd see in our area. I think people are still just shocked by the ordeal that it could happen, and not just happen in Carroll County, but happen so quickly. And for this community, it flipped it upside down.
One thing I believe the Carroll County comment and other press sources have been critical that not too much information has been released about the investigation. Do you have any feelings about that?
Yes, I think my personal feeling is I think that there could be a little more given out as far as what's being done, a little bit more transparency in that area. In my opinion, I think that there could be some more stuff released that, might judge somebody's memory or make them think, okay, yeah, I'm on the right track. And part of the reason is when this investigation took off, I just didn't see eye to eye with the sheriff on it. And which, that's fine. We all have our own opinions, but I didn't agree with a lot of the things that were being done or being said. And that's just my opinion. At some point, when do you say, okay, enough, well, we got to try something different?
Online, you'll have a lot of speculation about Delphi in particular. And one thing that's often speculated is that police had some sort of grand scheme in terms of releasing 2 sketches, and, that they were trying to coax out the murderer or something with their second press conference with the younger sketch. I'm just curious, have you heard anything around that? Or, as somebody who works in the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, what did you make about that sort of second sketch being released in the way it was?
Actually, I'm quite baffled by it. I don't know why they come up with that second sketch. I typically, from what I understand, talking to some of the people that I've talked to, you typically don't want to do that because it kind of muddies the water. So I don't know if they had somebody in mind or if that's what the witnesses come up with. I just don't know for sure. No, and I think that's part of the problem and part of the frustration with the public is they beg for your help or they ask for your help, and then they give them a little bit, but then they get nothing in return. And I think that's very frustrating. And that's why the public, not just the Delphi area, but throughout the country that's involved in this case, they're very frustrated by that.
Well, my name is Rob Ives. I was the prosecuting attorney in Carroll County at the time that Abby and Libby were murdered. And in addition to that, I was the prosecuting attorney for a prolonged period of time afterwards, during the period of time, particularly when the FBI was in Carroll County in great force. So, you know, the crime scene is at the end of a walking trail. And one thing that hasn't been reported very well is the bridge that's shown in the pictures is not actually on the walking trail. The bridge is not safe to cross, but people crossed it all the time. In fact, one factoid, which you may already know, is that a lot has been made sometimes of the fact that the suspect is looking down as he walks. Well, he's looking down as he walks because anybody walking across a bridge has to look down, because that bridge has not been in railroad operation since, I believe, 1987. And so it's not in very good shape, and you have to watch your step to cross it. Well, there's no law on the subject. And one thing that's hard, I've had to explain to people in the past, in Indiana, in some states, I understand in New York, the prosecuting attorney is actually at the top of the chain of command of all his local police departments. But in Indiana, the prosecutor is not in the chain of command. The prosecutor can ask the police to do things, he can tell them to do things, he can embarrass them if necessary, but he really can't order them to do anything because he's not in the chain of command. Now, in reality, the police are extremely cooperative, and they don't want to cross prosecutors, they don't want to be in the doghouse with prosecutors. But on something like this, it's more a question of what makes good sense. Prosecutors are not investigators. There's nothing legally that prevent me from releasing anything. There is a lot of crime scene evidence. Some of it is somewhat odd, but when I say that, any murder scene tends to have odd facts about it. I mean, in real life, obviously, people don't kill people really all that often. And this crime scene, there's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of unique facts there. And honestly, I'm shocked, and I promise you the police are shocked that it wasn't solved in a day or two, because it just didn't seem, we're not used to in rural Indiana. Normally, if person A murders person B, it's obvious who the suspects are. And usually it's pretty obvious how to prove they committed the crime. This crime is very strange. No, I mean, the crime scene was physically strange, but that's for the state police to decide what to release and not release. I've said that before. It's very odd. Yeah, I will say this. I thought initially it had to be somebody local, as people have said. And now I really don't know. I guess I'm afraid it might be somebody who happened to be there at the right time. There was no logical reason anybody would have known those girls were going to be there that day. I'm still stunned by it, to think that we had a crime scene, we had bodies within 24 hours of their death, that we had a video recording and an audio recording. I would have thought, and I promise you everybody else thought, we're never going to have this much evidence. I mean, and there's, as I say, there's more. That we have all these facts, some of them somewhat unusual, and there's going to be something about these facts that's going to point to somebody. I'm shocked, I'm stunned, but when I say that, I don't mean that I think anybody failed. Many, many great police officers have worked their tails off on this, and it's just, they just aren't finding it. And there were promising leads at one time or another, amazing things. I know there was DNA evidence that was not from the girls at the crime scene, and which is what you know, and that's really all I know. I know there was DNA evidence that was not from the girls at the crime scene, and which is what you know, and that's really all I know. I mean, it's just, it's far and away, well, along with the 4 girls that were killed in the fire in Florida, that period of time and those deaths are the worst thing that I can ever recall. And I grew up in Carroll County and lived there my whole life. It's just, as crimes, they're just horrifying. And then for me, it was very frustrating. A lot of people are working really hard, and officers are coming from all these surrounding counties to help. And a lot of really sharp people are working really hard, and it's so frustrating that we can't find any justice. It's horrible, and it bothers me today by a huge margin. The worst case, the worst crime, and the most frustrating outcome so far that I can recall. Well, I think this person's going to get caught, and I think they're going to get convicted. But I guess what I'm afraid of now, it might be one of these situations where somebody gets caught 2 years from now or 6 years from now and admits to something, and then as part of a deal, as we have seen in the past with serial killers, they'll say, oh, I also did this other one. As long as you don't give me the death penalty or some similar thing, I'll tell you about that. What I tell people all the time, people get really worried about murder, but if you're not living in an area where there are common disputes over drug territory, generally the only people that kill you only get killed by your friends. You only get killed by your relatives. If you can trust your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, because almost all murders in rural Indiana are crimes of passion. Somebody's really mad about something. You're not killed by a stranger. They don't kill you to take your wallet. They don't kill you just to hijack your car. They kill you because they're mad about some romantic relationship or some family relationship or something like that. That's what happens. This is not like that. There is no apparent motive. There's no logical reason for it. It makes no sense. It makes no sense that anybody would murder somebody where this murder occurred. And in fact, if you go out to this, I've told Gray Hughes I'd like to go out there with him. You go out there, there's actually at least one house that you can look down from a residential property, and see where these bodies were found. It's not totally isolated out there. With human nature being what it is, it's hard for me to believe anybody could do something so bizarre and horrible and not feel compelled to tell somebody about it. There was, honest to goodness, a case in Carroll County many years ago. We have a tremendous state police detective named Herb Clear, where the case started because a fellow in a bar in Japan on military duty was talking to somebody else and said that people had been murdered in Carroll County. The word got back. It got to the state police. Herb Clear, who was an incredible detective, found these bodies buried on a farm. And they were talking, we're talking 30 years ago now. And it was started because somebody couldn't help but talk about it. And it's an incredible case from many years ago. And maybe I take too much from that experience, but my experience in human nature is that I just can't believe somebody could commit this crime and not feel compelled to tell somebody, either to confess to it or to brag about it or to at least hint at it. So I've always believed that somebody does know. Maybe they're afraid. Maybe they don't want to believe the truth of it. And maybe there's somebody out there so self-disciplined they could commit this horrible crime and never tell anybody or hint at it, but it just seems impossible to me. The police presence in Carroll County for a month period or longer there, probably 2 months, was so stunningly greater than it had ever been in history. I have dealt with FBI agents many times in my career, one at a time, an FBI agent about some big fraud case or about steroids crossing state lines or something. At one point there was a time when there were probably 20, 25, I don't know, FBI employees in Carroll County at one time. And so we had this FBI presence, and then we had a huge state police presence, and then we had our sheriff's department working on it all the time, and the Delphi Police Department working on it all the time. And then officers, as I said, would come from other counties on loan. They would come and they would get assignments to go check on leads. Well, when you're checking on this many people, you're going to find some people up to no good. And so all sorts of things were happening during that period of time. And the other thing we were doing, and I've explained this a few times to people, is that, and the law has even changed on this since we were doing this, but when you have a crime in an area and you're trying to figure out, well, who could have been in that area, one thing we were doing was trying to figure out what cell phones had gone through that area. So we did a lot of subpoena for cell phone records where it wasn't a question of whether or not we thought a particular person did it. We're just trying to figure out who else could have possibly been, say, within 5 miles of that crime on that date. And so we put out a lot of paper relating to cell phone data back then. Well, as I say, it wasn't super hard at the time because all you really had to say was, though you had to look at the federal law and the state law. You go, there was a crime committed here. We want to know who was in that area during that period of time. And then all you get is, you're not getting the contents. You're not getting the phone calls they made. All you're getting is this cell phone with this number pinged off that tower during that period of time. It wasn't hard to get at that time. I suspect now, and I'm not up with this because I'm not keeping up with it at the moment, it's harder because the courts, there have been a lot of rulings since then about what is necessary to get that information from cell phone companies. And I'm not an expert on that subject.
It's just terrible. I just can't imagine that. My son, when he was a kid, he and his buddies played in here for all the time. I mean, he was born here. That's a different time, though.
I'm not going to go there.
Are we still looking at Mr. Logan as possibly involved?
At everything and all of it. We're looking at all of it. We said when this happened we were going to start all over.
So you never cleared him, Mr. Logan?
We haven't cleared anybody. No, I can't.
Can you talk about if he's related to Kevin Klein in any way?
I can't talk about any of the facts associated with the case, Emily. I can't. I can't wait to tell the story, but today's not the day. I'm not going to talk about Mr. Allen.
Yeah, it's a little disheartening that a member of our community could do this. Can do this to somebody within their own community, or just do this. Period. But can never judge a book by its cover. I don't know what makes people do stuff like this. This happens all over the world, not just in our case, but there's a lot of people out there who suffer from stuff like this, right? Very similar situations. I don't know why I don't know how can't program my mind to think like that. It's hard. How can somebody do that and then just go on living life like nothing happened? I don't understand. Probably never will understand that.
I think I've always said since the beginning that it had to be somebody that knew the area, and so I don't think it surprised me as much. But it's definitely hard and sad to know that he was right here among us. I don't think we wanted to believe it, but yeah, we know it is now.
You mean the sheriff,
the sheriff and Tony and Jerry Holman and Dave Vito and Jay Harper, and we have so many other people from our laboratory personnel that are so committed to this. Intelligence people that deal with it, work on it every single day. The U.S. Marshals, the task forces of federal agencies. It's been an extraordinary thing to see, and it's made us better. Their work collectively has made us better. It's not been perfect. You put two people in a room, you're going to argue, right? Eventually. Right. So we fuss with each other just like brothers and sisters do. But everybody's intent is the same. Everybody's intent is the same. And their life's focus is Abby and Libby. And then the family, and then the community, and then the county, and then the state, and then the nation, and then the the countries from around the world that we've talked with. I guess with such violence and such horror, some good's come out of this.
Her daughter was slain on a hiking trail exactly 3 years ago. Now, in an exclusive interview, she says she's unhappy with the way police have handled the investigation.
We're not getting anywhere. 3 years is too long.
14-year-old Libby German and her best friend, 13-year-old Abby Williams, were killed after going for a walk along this abandoned railway line in Indiana on February 13, 2017. Their bodies were discovered the next day. This chilling image of a suspect has haunted the case, along with brief audio of his words secretly recorded by Libby on her cell phone.
When we're hearing down the hill on that recording, they could have been led in this direction, down this hill.
Libby's mom, Carrie Timmons, tells me she is upset that police suspended their search at midnight the day the girls were reported missing and resumed the following morning.
To me, there were 2 babies out there in the woods. I don't care how cold it was. I don't care whose children they were. There should have been law enforcement out looking for them until they were found.
What could they have done differently?
I just think that they jumped the gun by calling off that search. The girls possibly could have been found that night, and who knows what the outcome would have been.
Carrie also says tracker dogs were not brought in by police.
Maybe if there had been dogs there, they could have probably led them to the girls fairly quickly.
You don't necessarily think they made mistakes. You think they could have done more.
Absolutely.
Sheriff Tobe Lesenby tells me volunteers did search through the night that first day and says tracker dogs were on the way when the girls' bodies were found.
Do you and the police department feel like you've done all that you could have done to find this killer?
Obviously we haven't, because no one's incarcerated yet. No one's being held accountable.
Several suspects have come and gone. The original sketch has been updated to a much younger man, but so far, no arrests.
I just want this killer found.
Whether we want to put it this way, but it's kind of like a game of poker. You don't want to reveal your hand.
Now, in what way is the FBI helping with this case?
Several avenues, and I guess I'll speak to that. You know, from a federal agency standpoint, their resources are, far more than what we have at the local level. So we have them on board mainly from the aspect of manpower in assisting us in going out and following up on the tips and leads that still pour in, and then also from a forensics standpoint as well. So, or the maybe CSI aspect. So, practically anything the Bureau can offer, they've offered, and maybe not every aspect or every resource, but a good portion of what they have to offer, they've offered to us, and we've accepted, obviously.
Yeah, that's why I figured that the DNA could be back rather quick if it was working through theirs. I figured that would have taken a lot less than 3 weeks.
Yeah, I follow what you're saying there. Again, it's just, all aspects of the evidence that we anticipated, but it's also, I guess, I'll also resort back to, we're going to end up, I feel confident we're going to end up in a court of law one of these days with this situation, and for us to put too much of a rush on this, and like I've been saying, we're double crossing the T's and double dotting the I's, because as you may or may not be aware of, in a court of law, if there's just one little spark of doubt that's planted in a court of law, we lose the case, and we don't want that.
Now, do you think that he is from this locality?
Another good question, Mike. Initially that's where we, obviously with most investigations, if, the local focal point is not gaining us anything, that's why the search is expanded, because at this stage nothing's really turning up that I'm aware of at the local level. So that's why it's expanded, in essence, nationwide. And so that's why we reach out to people nationwide at this stage to provide us with information. So, again, I really can't speak to, obviously, once we have someone in custody, we'll know. But at this stage, it's a guess.
Yeah, it happened like 2 miles up the street from my father's house. And when I seen it on Fox News, I was like, wow, that's really crazy. Yeah. And I figured that that an arrest would have been within a couple days. I mean, that off the top. Because I figured it was a local guy, local area. He knew the place. Right. He wouldn't have just traveled to that little spot. So I figured with the picture, I might have known the guy, but I'd never seen him.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That was the same obvious concept or thought process we had as well, because, as I've shared with other outlets, that we've had our share of even double homicides, but they were elderly folks back in the 90s, and it turned out to be, unfortunately, grandchildren involved in their deaths. And so, we were able to cap those pretty quick. But this one's just, it's got a whole twist to it that even I, as a 30-year veteran, have never seen. This one's just, it's got a whole twist to it that even I, as a 30-year veteran, have never seen.
Somebody knows. Somebody out there knows who this person is.
Well, this story just went nuts. They say it was a ritualistic cult that killed those girls.
I'm her bestie, Aunt Em.
Abby and Libby were friends with everybody. They were inseparable.
Why Libby? Why Abby? Why Delphi? Why Carroll County? I say that because this is a classic example and a clear example that evil lives amongst us.
Shown in front of me is an enlarged depiction of a person believed to be the suspect in this case. We are actively looking for this person. We believe this person is our suspect.
The lead agency was Carroll County, which is where the bodies were found. State police, though, were also very involved, and the FBI as well, mostly in an advisory capacity.
It wasn't long before the police started to really zero in on one person of interest among others, the man who owned the land where those girls' bodies were found, 77-year-old Ron Logan.
Ron Logan generally met the description of the man that was seen in the picture, potentially the bridge guy. And there are reports that he has been violent towards women in the past.
When I seen the picture of the bridge guy, I knew for certain that it was Ron Logan. That was his figure that I seen. My name is Connie Dillman. I knew Ron Logan. I had a relationship with him for approximately 6 years.
This is my backyard. My backyard just happens to be bigger than most people. How many people have a murder committed at their home in their backyard? Hey, there's the crime scene down there. See how the ground's much more matted down right in here? I think you're right there.
I was at my house. It was on the news when I heard it. The very day that I heard that Abby and Libby were murdered on his property, and I said, oh my God, he finally killed somebody. And I knew that he killed Abby and Libby. I knew he's capable of doing something like that. Ron's a dangerous man. He's a violent man. Ron told me that he was going to kill me. I'm lucky to be sitting here talking to you.
What do you hear on there?
Nothing that I recognize at all. No one. I don't I don't recognize the voice at all.
Wow. That's your voice. It's Ron Logan saying, down the hill. And I called the tip line.
On the day Libby and Abby were killed, Ron has this like very strange alibi. He says he was driving with his cousin to Lafayette, Indiana. It's about an hour round trip drive to buy tropical fish.
Ironically, this tropical fish run is claimed to have happened the exact time Abby and Libby were abducted and killed. So this alibi was supported by Mr. Logan's cousin. When he was questioned by investigators, he said he didn't even see Ron Logan that day. And that's what led to Ron Logan becoming a suspect.
I talked to 2 FBI agents for a good hour. I had told him about his violent tendencies and what he had done to me. I said, this is who killed Abby and Libby. This is your bridge guy, and that's Ron Logan. I said, this is who killed Abby and Libby. This is your bridge guy, and that's Ron Logan. I think they didn't have enough to charge Ron for murder. I was so glad that he was in jail because for sure they was putting the pieces of the puzzle together to get him.
It's really odd. They had their eye on Ron Logan, but the bottom line is they never let this out to the public. I feel like both of the families felt like it was a waste of time to investigate Ron Logan.
The police, they're not looking at a couple of leads. They're not even looking at hundreds of leads. They're looking at tens of thousands of leads. And then in the summer of 2017, the police drop a sketch of the suspect.
Some people believe they saw a bridge guy and contributed to the sketch, but none of them reported seeing what happened to Libby and Abby.
But Delphi has always been a good old boy community where we don't talk about our problems. We kind of sweep them under the rug, and I think that these murders exposed a lot of that kind of underbelly.
Very uncomfortable feeling. We're a year today. There's this notion that this is cold. It's not cold. This is not going to be cold. Over 30,000 tips. Those tips continue to come in. We'll continue to work them the very, very best that we can. If you're watching this and you're responsible, today may be your day. It might be tomorrow, but I can guarantee you your day's coming.
As months turned into years, members of Libby and Abby's family appeared on the local media to express their frustration with the murder investigation.
I worry about him getting somebody else's child and destroying another family.
There's no way the cops could be following up on every single thing that they're hearing. When they had gone a while with nothing to show, the police would put on a press conference.
We're releasing additional portions of the audio recording from that day. We're also releasing video recovered from Libby's phone. The video shows a suspect walking on the bridge. Watch the person's mannerisms as they walk. Do you recognize the mannerisms as maybe someone that you might know?
For a journalist covering the story, the audio clips and the video clips, they seem to raise more questions than answers. But it was the final reveal in the news conference that honestly was the most puzzling.
During the course of this investigation, we have concluded the first sketch released will become secondary as of today. The result of the new information and intelligence over time leads us to believe the sketch is the person responsible for the murders of these two little girls.
The Carroll County Sheriff's Department has no clue what they're doing.
Law enforcement was crossing off individuals who would fit the mold of this killer. So sex offenders, violent offenders, even killers from out of Delphi, out of Indiana. And it smacked of desperation.
There should be plenty of DNA, there should be plenty of prints, but for whatever reason, it is not at their disposal. They are not using the evidence to lead them to the perpetrator. The crime scene, from what I am to understand, there weren't proper protocols that were followed.
Though our official sources weren't willing to appear on television, officials formerly with the investigations do say that the crime scene was compromised. They say volunteers walked all over it, contaminating the crime scene before the police could protect it. It is also alleged that evidence was lost and mishandled before it could be registered at the lab because of the inexperience of the investigators. Fingerprints and DNA are often inadmissible if they aren't collected properly. One former member of the task force told us point blank, "We got the training after the murders."
If, in fact, the crime scene and the evidence in this case were mishandled, the carousel of suspects makes more sense. If you don't have reliable forensic evidence, it's very hard to make a case. And you may have to look at suspects that have committed similar crimes in the past.
From my understanding, the way that they are pursuing this case is entirely contingent upon somebody confessing. That is their plan.
When Carroll County Prosecutor Robert Ives was on Channel 59, despite all the evidence they'd collected at the crime scene, it actually seemed like he was hoping for an immaculate confession.
The most likely thing is, and this is a terrible thing to hope for, is that some other crime would be solved and the person, as has sometimes happened in the past, the person would say, "Oh, I committed this crime in Delphi also."
And suddenly, they announced the first arrest.
Police have arrested and jailed 50-year-old Richard Allen in connection with the double murder. The arrest made in the shocking Delphi murders of two girls that has stunned the small community. Police have arrested and jailed 50-year-old Richard Allen in connection with the double murder.
Richard Allen, you child murderer! Why did you do it? Shame on you!
I believe in a God of justice and righteousness. Today, I believe that same God has provided us with justice for Abby and Libby.
I am proud to report to you the arrest of Richard M. Allen of Delphi on 2 counts of murder.
A portly, middle-aged dad who works at a CVS?
We encourage everybody to continue to call in tips, not only about Richard Allen, but about any other person that you may have.
The public thought presumably they had their man. And yet they were still looking for more information, still asking the public for help. They found an unspent .40 caliber round near the girls' bodies.
Investigators were able to match that bullet to a 6-hour handgun found in Allen's home.
But a month after Richard Allen's arrest, the authorities did something really out of character. Under the guise of transparency, they made their appeal directly to the public.
Developing this morning, an Indiana judge has unsealed more than 100 documents related to the Delphi murders case. And in those documents, investigators reveal Richard Allen reportedly confessed to killing 14-year-old Libby German and 13-year-old Abby Williams several times, at least 5 times, during recorded prison phone calls to his wife and also his mom.
Forensic examination did show that the bullet found at the crime scene had ejection marks on it and could have come from the gun found in Richard Allen's home.
Allen's defense claims the science just isn't there.
Richard Allen was brought from the Westfall Correctional Facility, a state prison, shackled at the waist and ankles, for a hearing that lasted all of 10 minutes.
Our client's the wrong guy. We want things unsealed, but that's how confident we are in our client. That's how confident we are that the evidence is nothing for us to worry about.
The prosecution says they can't release a transcript of the confessions because of the gag order by the courts. So who asked for the gag order? The prosecution. So it does give one reason to be skeptical about those confessions.
If crime scene protocols are not properly followed forensically, the prosecution needs somebody to confess on their own. I would say that there's a lot of reason to believe that they are railroading Rick Allen. Eyewitness accounts, false confessions, it's all just hearsay statements. It's speculation, as far as I'm concerned. Pseudoscience with the bullet. I mean, it is insulting to your intelligence, the way that the case is presented. Law enforcement is super tight-lipped and seems to have ulterior motives. The fix is in for Richard Allen.
I believe that the prosecution kind of needs this to go away, and so it would certainly benefit them if something were to happen to Rick. When Rick walked into his hearing in June, he looked like somebody who was terminally ill. What are they doing to him in there?
If those lawyers are telling the truth in their court filing, well, this story just went nuts. They say that it wasn't this guy. They say it was a ritualistic cult that killed those girls. The defense is suggesting that Abby and Libby were killed by a group of Odinists, which is a Norse cult that has ties to white supremacy. They purportedly practice animal sacrifices and even human sacrifices as a ritual. And the defense says that this was likely a ritualistic killing because of the way the bodies were found.
Tree branches were placed on the body in such a way to supposedly represent Norse symbols, a calling card for the killer or killers.
The defense was willingly and graciously providing details of a crime that for 6 years has been a secret. And if it hasn't created a seismic shift yet, it will, and it should.
White power Odinists, ritualistic killings, and the possibility that other people might have been involved in the murders.
This is important because Richard Allen doesn't have any ties to Odinism.
The confession could be explained, the bullet is compromised, the witness accounts are inconsistent, and not one witness can positively identify Richard Allen as being at the scene of the crime at the time the girls were killed. The FBI thought Ron Logan was involved.
The biggest reason to suspect Ron Logan was not just that the bodies were found on his property, but that he had created a false alibi prior to the bodies being discovered. That's huge. The FBI also claimed that Ron Logan's cell phone pinged twice near the crime scene on the evening of the 13th. So that, to me, is very suspicious.
It's too late for Ron Logan. He's dead. I mean, those answers, if he's responsible or was involved, went with him to the grave.
Richard Allen, I don't know of any criminal history that he has. His age, he would not be somebody I would expect to be engaging in this kind of behavior. If he was interested in children that are 12 or 13 years old, I would expect to find that somewhere. So I don't see Richard Allen as a viable suspect. There's no indication that he knew Libby and Abby.
This is your bridge guy, and that's Ron Logan. I think they Didn't have enough to charge Ron for murder. I was so glad that he was in jail because for sure they was putting the pieces of the puzzle together.